But the big question is, why is the online space shifting, right? And it's shifting because of generative AI. We've all seen this happening with AI overviews, ChatGPT, etc. And for the purposes of today's webinar, we're talking about generative AI being artificial intelligence that can create new content based on existing content and inputs, right? So like it can create new text or images based on information that it can already pull from. So existing data like ChatGPT does when you put something in and it gives you something out, or AI overviews when you put in a search and you see all of the different summaries, etc. Generative AI is acting as this information intermediary. It's highlighting and citing summarized answers and solutions in a way that we've never seen before. And so the old SEO playbook that we all know and love, and some of us have used for a long, long time, built around, keyword mapping and ranking, content alone as a standalone is no longer enough to get your organization, found in search. So how we market our businesses or how we approach client strategies has to shift to adapt, which is exactly why this conversation is so important and what we're going to be talking about today. And I would love, as we're going through this, for you to put in the chat, if you want, what your business is. And maybe just like one, piece that you'd love to pull from this and what maybe you're seeing as a challenge in your organization. I think that would be really useful for us. So we can't talk about, all of the changes that are happening without first talking a little bit about the before AI SEO world and how important SEO is for every single business. So at RMG, we look at SEO as being really foundational to every single organization's online visibility, because not only does it inform your website structure, hierarchy, navigation, your content strategy, it also informs how people find your products or services, right? So this is really important. SEO has always been a reliable marketing bridge between a user that has a specific need and your website that satisfies that user need. But that direct route between a user's search query and your brand's website is no longer guaranteed. After AI, or sort of in this transition space that we're in, search itself has become an experience, not just a results page. So SEO is still more important than ever, but the rules have begun to change. And as a result, we're seeing two key shifts that are redefining how SEO marketers such as ourselves need to approach organic visibility. So what are these two shifts, right? This is what we all want to know. So the number one shift that we're seeing, and I'm sure that you have too, is that search results are no longer confined to clickable links. In 2020, roughly 35% of Google searches ended without a click. Today, that number has nearly doubled to 65%. So the old days of keyword rankings and getting your site to rank and getting that click over to your website are gone. So visibility within these generative AI experiences now matters as much, if not more, as rankings used to. And then the second shift that we're seeing, as these zero-click searches have begun to rise, brand entity awareness has become more critical than ever, right? We're shifting our focus from this keyword, intent-driven space to understanding entities, people, brand, and organizations. And a really good example of this shift is at the beginning of 2023. Shortly after OpenAI launched ChatGPT at the end of 2022, Google updated its long-standing EAT portion of its algorithm to include experience. So it became experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And by adding this experience metric pretty early on, Google was sort of making a claim saying, we're not only going to rank information, we're also going to rank where that information is coming from. So that's brand entity recognition in action. And it's so important because you need to be able to be cited and visible and a trusted source. So how do you become a trusted source? How do you survive in this new landscape that we found ourselves in? SEO isn't dead. If you've heard it, and you've probably heard it 1,000 times, especially if you've been in the space for a long time, we hear it often, but it is evolving. So we want to talk a little bit about how you can adapt. At RMG, we have three sort of primary pillars to future-proof your SEO. And the first is a strong technical SEO foundation. This one seems really, really obvious. Your website needs to be technically sound, right? So traditional search engines and generative AI can understand and surface your content, But even in 2025, we come across a lot of websites that still aren't where they need to be in order to be found. Conversational content strategy. This one is huge. The old thin content and volume blogging days are gone. So today's success comes from creating helpful human content that mirrors how people and AI are naturally asking questions and seeking information. It's gone from a lot of short tail, like best running shoes, to what are the best running shoes for plantar fasciitis and wide feet, as an example. And then digital cohesion for this brand entity awareness piece that we're talking about. In order to stay visible in AI search, your brand must be recognized as a credible source. So let's dive into these pillars in a little more detail. So technical SEO, more important than ever. We've kind of come full circle, right? Your website has to kick butt in order to be competitive in an AI-driven space. So how do you build a technically strong website? Few different ways from a generative AI perspective that are really, really important. The number one, schema markup for contextual understanding. Schema, like you've probably seen it if you're typing in like Nike shoes, for example, you see the star ratings or the 5-star reviews under a product. That's schema markup in action. It's specialized computer language, and it gives generative AI more content or more context about the content on your web page. And it's really important for it to understand what your website or content, your blog post, etc., is about. Without it, even great content can go unseen. The second is heading structure for hierarchy and topical depth. This again seems like a really obvious one, but it's so often overlooked. The amount of times that we've seen a website with like 6 different H1s, we could, penny for every time we've had that, we would be very, very rich. So your website content needs a cohesive heading structure because it teaches AI and traditional search engines how your content fits within a larger topic. It's like an outline for the content on that page. And then the third is site speed and performance for user experience and crawlability. This one is so important because generative AI, just like traditional search engines, likes a fast site, right? The faster your site loads, the more often it's going to crawl your content. The more often it crawls your content, the better chance you have of being cited in AI overviews, ChatGPT, etc. So just like with traditional Google SEO, you need to have a technically sound website in order to be found. So I'm going to pass it to Abbie, who's going to talk a little bit more about the remaining 2 pillars.
Thanks, Nina. So that leads us really nicely into our second pillar that centers around content. When you're putting together your content strategy and recommendations, you really want it to suit the conversational, intent-driven narrative that these Gen AI platforms were built for. In SEO, we've always said that content is king, but in order to be cited by LLMs like ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, your content needs to be primed for that back and forth style that users are beginning to expect. The more conversational the content is, the easier it is for LLMs to translate that content to users. So making sure that that content is readily available on your website, social media, wherever Gen AI platforms are pulling from is a really valuable way to show that you're a credible source. So how do we do that? Firstly, we want to make sure that the content we write matches the search behavior of present day users. So that means acknowledging the reason that people are turning to these platforms. There's a lot of noise online that we're seeing, and more users are turning to LLMs to consolidate and compare information for them. So you need to make sure that that information as it relates to your brand is readily available for these machines to crawl. Secondly, we need to understand that these platforms are built to really understand a user's intent cadence and address what they're looking for. A really easy way to do that is through the Q&A format. But if you're not using the language that your audience does and the way they use it, you might never appear in that search in the first place. So Nina gave an example earlier about how users are searching and what that's looking like today. So while users were searching maybe best vegan restaurants 2022 a few years ago, now they're searching what are the best vegan restaurants in Boston that have gluten-free options. The difference is that search is now longer form, multifaceted, and open for further conversation. Lastly, you always need to make sure that your connecting your content back to your brand. Why are you qualified to speak on this subject? Why should users trust you? Why, is there any proprietary data that you can provide that shows your authority? So Nina had mentioned earlier that Google added experience to their qualifiers for determining a website's search value. This is where that comes in. So how can you create content that isn't just that general fluff, but shows your brand's real world experience? And then lastly, as a reminder, AI is really helpful. These platforms can be very helpful for you, but at the end of the day, they are not human. They're not an employee. They're just a tool. And using them for assistance in building the framework of your content can be really helpful, but you want to make sure that anything you put out has a human touch, and that's what's really going to be visible to users, and you're going to build that brand loyalty. Our last pillar really relates back to that brand entity awareness. So, creating a cohesive digital footprint that's recognizable to your audience wherever they find you. So, we're past the point where marketing departments could really exist in silos. They all really need to be integrated and connected at this point. The reason being is that consistency in your messaging shows your credibility to Gen AI. Anything contradictory to yourself will devalue your brand and confuse these machines. Unfortunately, they really don't have the nuance to understand kind of the human tone. So you want to really make sure that that message that you're putting out there is cohesive and shows your authority, your trustworthiness, and ultimately that you're worth citing on these platforms. And there's a couple ways to do that. So, firstly, ensuring that the foundation of your strategy is rooted in an overarching message. At RMG, we build out pillars for our campaigns based on the most important facets of our clients' brands. And we use that to support all of our recommendations. We use that overarching message everywhere. So, paid ads, socials, your website, email, wherever users are looking for you, that's where you want your message to exist. These Gen AI platforms are pulling from everywhere. So, you really need to make sure that that message is consistent. Citations, backlinks, and PR mentions are still important to search presence. That's that offsite SEO. And now, even more so with these AI machines because they're pulling from everywhere. Any kind of external source that's going to be pointing back to your brand or your website is another opportunity to be founded and to be cited. We actually saw a report yesterday from Ahrefs that talked about how important these brand mentions are, not only because it's important to be mentioned, but because AI platforms are actually contextualizing brands by relating to the information that's pulled alongside them. So that is extra context to provide to users. And then lastly, bringing it back to that real world experience and expertise, using quotes from your team of experts, collecting testimonials from happy customers or clients, utilizing your industry experience is going to show users and LLMs that you're worth trusting. So that was a lot of information from Nina and I. So we'll bring it back all together. SEO has really always bridged the gap between search algorithms and humans, but now it even kind of further bridges that gap between humans and this more advanced version of machine learning. The foundation of SEO hasn't changed, but like Nina said, the rules have kind of evolved. We're no longer focusing on that keyword game exclusively, but we're focusing on uplifting our clients' credibility and connecting their digital ecosystem. The brands that get ahead of this shift will be rewarded, but they have to kind of combine the following. As a reminder, that technical precision, as outlined by Nina, is your website primed for machine crawling, but also for a positive user experience? Communication that's authentically you and ready to start a conversation with your prospects? And that consistent brand authority and messaging wherever users look for you. Now I'm going to pass it back to Nina, who's going to give you an idea of how we're integrating this into our strategic recommendations.
Thanks, Abby. So, everything that we've talked about today really comes together in how we've adapted to approach our SEO strategies for our clients. And we wanted to share a little bit of that insight with you today, since I know that's sort of top of mind for everybody. Not only how you can bring it into your own organizations, but if you are a marketing agency, how you can potentially approach your client work too. So, we take a three-pronged approach to AI-driven SEO. We start with AI focused SEO audits. So basically, we've taken our existing SEO audits and set them up to be focusing on all of the things that we just talked about. So making sure that your website's technical setup, your structure, including schema markup, and anything that might be limiting your AI visibility gets looked at. So we want to make sure that the foundation that we're working from is as strong as possible. And then we focus on content and brand entity optimization, like Abby just walked you through. Once the foundation is strong, technically, we can align your content strategy with conversational AI-driven search behavior, the things that we know that people are actually searching for, the questions that we know that they're asking. We align your content strategy to address all of those. And then we help optimize on-site and off-site signals to build trust, consistency, and brand recognition across all of your digital footprints. Whoops. And then the technical, here we are. Always technical. And then finally, the last one, which is my absolute favorite because I'm a data nerd, is the accountability via measurement and analytics. Because data informs everything that we do, we track and measure all of the things that matter. So tracking visibility in both generative AI and traditional search engines, engagement and growth across all the different platforms, including LLMs. So this helps us and you understand what is working, what isn't working, and where the opportunities align. And together, this three-pronged approach ensures our clients aren't just visible, but they're also ready to encounter all of the changes that are happening rapidly, right? We know that the future is driven by AI, and so setting you up for success with this three-pronged approach, make sure that you're ready to adapt as new things come, like AI mode becoming the standard Google search engine versus just AI overviews, for example. So we'd love to continue this conversation with you or your organization. So feel free to reach out to us afterward. You can reply to the replay email or reach out via our website. We'd love to talk to you more about this integrated approach. So thank you very much. We wanted to keep it short and sweet for you, but jam-packed with information. And as I mentioned, we will be sending out a replay after and a little bit of a freebie to help you sort of kickstart your Beyond SEO strategy, going through all of the things that we talked about today and some additional items too, so you can make sure that your website is set up for success. And now I'd love to dive into the Q&A. I haven't even had a chance yet to look into all the different chat here. So Lindsay, let us know, where should we start?
Um, So one person asked, they said they have a limited budget and a small team. They can only focus on one thing to start optimizing for AI search. Where should they start?
Ooh, this is such a good question. Abby, do you want to jump in or do you want me to answer this one?
You take it away, Nina.
Yeah, so I think that the technical is always the place to start. It's your home base, it's your foundation. And without it, all of the content and all of the other things that you're going to do aren't really going to matter, right? If Google can't crawl your site, if your page load is slow, if you're not utilizing schema markup and other markers that we know generative AI is specifically looking for, then all of the work that you do after that is just never going to be found. So if there's something that you can start with, it would be definitely making sure that your technical, your sort of schema, your speed, and your structure is sound.
Definitely. I also think that it's helpful to look at how your brand is showing up on these platforms by using them yourself. So going on and searching something you think a prospect would search and seeing who comes up. It's usually quite surprising what kind of information they're presenting and how they're presenting it. So I always find that to be a really helpful starting point for understanding how these platforms are kind of contextualizing not only your industry, but also your competitors. And you can kind of learn a lot from that.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
One person asked if you could share a little bit more about what schema markup is.
Yeah. So schema markup, as I mentioned, is like special computer language. There's over 700 different types of schema markup, which can sound kind of overwhelming. And this is probably where a developer can become sort of handy. But if you have a website like WordPress, for example, and the Yoast plugin, there's an option in that that allows you to add schema markup. So for example, if you have an FAQ page, and you go into your Yoast plugin, you can pick Yoast, you can pick FAQ schema. So it's basically special code that gives search engines and generative AI more information about a website and its content. Another really good example is if you go and you type in recipes, like let's say you're looking for like, I don't know, one sheet fajita pan dinner, and you see those recipe cards pop up, that's all driven by schema markup. Or if you see an author in the organic listings, that's driven by authorship markup. Or there's nonprofit markup or event markup, all different kinds that you can use that just basically act as a conduit for information from your website's content to the search engine or the generative AI platform.
Great. Another good question
Yeah.
about the new E in EAT.
Oh, the
Google
experience.
has historically leaned on expertise in leading sources. So what makes experience different?
That's a really, really great question. Abby, do you want to take that one, or I'm happy to, but you look
I
excited.
I can start a ways. Yeah, sure. So I would say the biggest difference between expertise and experience is the difference between showing your work and how you've applied it in your industry. So that would be kind of your experience, your case studies, testimonials from, happy customers. And then expertise is that information that's coming from your team of experts. So anything that you can relate back to what Nina said, like authorship, showcasing why you are an expert in your field, rather than having content that's really general.
Yeah.
Anything? Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the one thing to think about is the reasoning why, right, behind why Google added it. So when OpenAI launched ChatGPT in November of 22, Google has been using AI for a long time, but they knew that the marketplace was going to be flooded with content. So anybody now can go into ChatGPT and be like, I need you to act like an SEO expert and write me, a blog post about generative AI. But what ChatGPT and other platforms like it can't do is account for that experience factor, right? You can write an article like a doctor, but you aren't really a doctor. So that authorship component is starting to come, into play. And as Abby was talking about brand entity recognition, this is a really good place to do a few easy things like when you have a blog post, link your name to your LinkedIn profile, for example, right? That gives a real humanized context to who you are. And that's that experience piece too, because bots cannot replace that, right? They can act as, as a doctor or act like an SEO expert when you put in the prompts, but they can't replace that real life human experience.
Mhm. And you'll also see this on Google's AI mode. The
Mm.
first thing you'll notice that they pull in is information from Google business listings,
Yeah.
because that's a citation, that's a directory that's really important, and that shows how you're interacting with real other humans.
Yeah. Such a good point. Yeah.
Do you want to take one more?
Oh, yeah. I think we have time for a couple more. Yeah.
Um, is there a way to see if competitors are showing up in AI results?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, go for it, Abby, if you want to talk about this
Hey.
on camera. Yeah.
Yes. So I talked a little bit about using the language that your real life customers do. So what Nina and I like to do is go onto these platforms and pose a question that you think that your prospect would ask these platforms and see what shows up. And that also gives you an idea of what ChatGPT or all these platforms think who they think your competitors are. A lot of the times when we do SEO audits, who shows up as a competitor is not who you think your competitors are, because it's really a search competitor, not necessarily an industry competitor. And that's going to give you a lot of information about the kind of context surrounding these people who are outranking you, and what you can take from them, what you can learn from them, and the language that they're using that's helping them appear on these platforms.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. If you have the budget for it, SEMrush has a really great AI visibility tool that you can pay for on a per project basis. It's a little bit pricey, but it gives you all of the mentions of your brand across the different LLMs, and you can look at the competitive set too. So it gives you what people are actually asking that sources and surfaces your brand mentions in, say, ChatGPT, and how you stack up against the competitive set that you've identified. So that can be a really powerful tool if you have the marketing budget. And Abbie and I like to spend time looking at that because it gives us a lot of insight, right? Not only into the user side of it, like how they're using ChatGPT to find information about a client's organization, but that can be a good idea, a good way to understand how your competitive set is stacking up as well. Yeah.
Got a content related one. Should I be creating completely new content for AI search, or can I optimize what we already have?
Shall I take this one?
Yeah.
I'll Okay. Evergreen content is really, really important. So creating a constant stream of new content is good, but it's better to always refresh your existing content because that content is going to compound over time. You're going to see, we often see with all of our clients, a blog written in 2015, 2020 is going to be outperforming new content just because it simply had more time to perform. So making sure that your content, not all of it, but a lot of it is evergreen in the sense that it isn't related to a specific time period, the URL isn't dated, or if you've updated it recently, you mark that you updated it since this date. So you're kind of showing that you're not only posting new content, but you're also revising anything that you've posted in the past.
Yeah.
So this one is more about just the volume of different LLMs. Given that there's Google AI overviews, ChatGPT, Perplexity, do we need to optimize for all of them separately, or is there kind of a one size fits all approach?
It's a really great question. I think right now, it's more or less a one size fits all, but I think that's going to change, right? We know that ChatGPT has this partnership, for example, with Shopify. We know ChatGPT is going to launch paid ads come January. That's going to change that particular platform, most likely, even from the SEO side. So I think for right now, all of the things that we talked about here are standard for both traditional search and generative AI driven search. But that could change, right? The rules could definitely change as Perplexity or, ChatGPT says, these are the specific things we're looking for, kind of like how Google's search algorithm has evolved over time. But right now, I think it's more or less one size fits all. We know, yeah, go for it, Abbie.
I
Yeah.
was just going to add that it's really important to note that all of these platforms use Google as the blueprint for their algorithms. So all of their qualifiers for valuable content come from how Google built their algorithm and has been building their algorithm over the last 20 years. So using that as a foundation for now, and then I would say with time, we'll start to see once they have a little bit more clout, I guess, with the different platforms. But I do think the different platforms are used by different people, I think like Gemini is probably used by people in more professional settings, whereas ChatGPT is maybe a younger group. We'll start to see more of those like different audience segments as time goes on and people continue to use them more and more.